Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Spain Duncan. I am an alcoholic. Hi, guys. My sobriety date is March 6th of 2010. My home group is Hope for Today. We meet on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I am sponsored by a woman who is sponsored by a woman who is sponsored. And I heard this weekend, my sponsor knows she sponsors me. It's very important. And I sponsor women who sponsor women who sponsor women. And they're right here. Yeah. Okay. All right. Couple quick things. Steve, thank you so much, and Connie and the committee for including us. We're from Louisville, Kentucky, and this is kind of our Catalina wine mixer. We love Nashville. We love Music City, and we had our very own Dawn last night, and then me today. And I know we're just kind of proud of our AA in Louisville, and we love it, and we get to be here together and see so many new friends and old friends. And I would have to tell you, this is my dad died with 30 years of sobriety, and in those 30 years he missed 2 of these. It was a big deal, Music City, and I know that he would love this, and he would love that my sister Stephanie's here with us tonight too, or today too. So just a few sentimental things out of the way, and now I'll do what I was asked to come here and do. Make you feel better about yourself. It's true. So Alcoholics Anonymous is everything to me. It is everything. Like Sheldon said this morning, Alcoholics Anonymous works and God is real. But I balked that like so many of us. And when I think about being a kid, my family was riddled with nervous people. Did y'all have nervous people? High-strung. They would say, he's just a little high-strung. Basically, that meant that he would have a few drinks and bust the windows out of the house. I remember being about 13 years old, and Dad didn't show up for Christmas, which wasn't unusual. My dad didn't show up for a lot of things, and I was crying, because I'm a daddy's girl, and I didn't understand alcoholism, and nobody said alcoholism. And they told me that Dad was at Our Lady of Peace, and I said, for what? And they said his nerves are bad. And my dad shot cocaine into his veins and drank early times. His nerves were bad. I grew up, and nobody said that. Nobody wanted to say that. We don't say what it is. We try to be polite. By the time I was in junior high, that magic, time we talked about this weekend, I got introduced to alcohol, and let me tell you, it made everything okay. That's what makes me an alcoholic, and I've heard it said from the podium, and I think it's just important that we remember that. There's lots of people that are crazy, and most of the world's selfish. That's not what makes me an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic because I have an allergic reaction to alcohol. When I drink alcohol, it produces a phenomenon of craving. My dad used to explain it like this. He'd say, I like Dr. Pepper. I've never sat down and drank a case of Dr. Pepper, right? I haven't. None of my girl. I don't like it that daggone much, right? But I've been known to drink dang on near a case of beer in one sitting. In fact, one of those times was the night before my first wedding, and natural ice had just come out. And I like to try new things. And I was so hungover. And my future husband said to me, please don't drink before the wedding. Now that's a sign. That's an ominous warning, when they got to ask you if you could just not drink. The wedding's at 1. If you could just wait till later in the afternoon. And it was hard. It was harder than first, we're always like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then you're looking like, ooh, drink beer, drink whiskey, drink anything. I always got more questions, when you make commitments like that. I want to go back over the details. The devil's in the fine print, What do you mean? And that's what happened later in that marriage. A year after we were married, he said, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. And I said, well, I'll quit drinking. And he said, okay, that'd be real good. And about a week later, I wanted to renegotiate and revisit the terms of that, because I think, I felt like quit drinking forever. We really didn't say. Quit drinking whiskey, quit drinking tequila. Like, I just felt like it was a generalized statement. We needed to kind of hone in on the real requirements. And turns out he meant forever. That was alarming. At that time, I had 2 little girls and had been married a year. And I want you to know that up until that time, when I had those 2 little girls, and insert man here, I had a husband. We had a 3-bedroom ranch. There was a creek that ran through the back, which sat on 2 acres. There were 2 cars in the driveway. And since I was 12 years old, that's what was going to make me okay. And there I sat in the middle of it, and I wasn't okay. In fact, I was probably worse off than I'd ever been. Because now, since I'm 17 years old, I'm putting something in my body to feel different than I do. I can't stand how I feel sober. I love that explanation we get, when we come to these rooms. It helped me identify, it helped me connect. It's not how I feel when I'm drunk. It's how uncomfortable I feel when I'm not. I can't stand sober. So when you say never take a drink, and we're not going to smoke left-handed cigarettes, and we're not going to pop some pills or do a lot, we're just going to raw dog this thing. Like, that is what an order, I don't know that I can. And the other thing about me is I inherited some of that, high-strungness of my family. My mother's maiden name is Ferguson, and my grandpa's used to say we're Scottish. We're like the Irish, only meaner. And that's true. And I have a rage in me. And I'm a rager. And I get a false sense of power. And it helps me control the situation and makes me think I'm safe. See, everybody's got a fight or flight, and mine's stuck on fight. It is just stuck there. There's no flight. Katie said I step forward. When you come at me, I step forward. I always think about, wish I was a little armadillo. They just roll up and hide under a bush. Nobody gets mad at them, or they don't break nothing. It's kind of cute. Not me. I'm a grizzly bear, and I get 10 foot tall, and I get real loud, and I furrow my brow, and I point my finger, so this is what right looks like, in case you're wondering. All right, Sheldon talks about poking them in the chest, and that's that fear and that anger and that rage I carry. And so when I get drunk, those 2 little girls, they hide in their closet, in their bedroom, and they cover their ears. Yeah. So he meant forever. And I didn't know how to not drink forever. I didn't know how I was going to get through that weekend coming up without drinking. And he wasn't up to negotiating anything, because I, slept with his best friend. Oops. Boys are real sensitive about that stuff. And so they, I wasn't in a position to negotiate the terms. It was just kind of cut and dry. So I did the only thing I knew to do, and I called my daddy. And on my 18th birthday in 1989, on February 16th, my dad had called me, and my heart broke, and my dad was dying of alcoholism. And I said, Daddy, if you can just stay sober, or, stay alive. You don't even got to be sober. If you could just stay alive, Daddy, I'll get a job and I'll get an apartment. I'll take care of you. And that night, I didn't know it at the time, but my dad got on his knees in my Mimi's living room and he said that prayer we say, God help me. And that was the beginning that was my dad's sobriety date, was that day. And so he'd been sober about 5 or 6 years by this time, and I knew something was different. I thought AA, you all just retired. You were retired drinkers. Like your career had run its course and you retired and you all got together, and I thought it was mostly old white men in my mind, and you all talked about how you used to drink, and that was AA, and I thought that's good. That's real good for Dad. But he was retired. But I also knew that something was different, and here's why. Back then we used to have phones you picked up like this and you put them down, and the number was always getting disconnected and cut off, and you didn't always have a number. And we used to have to call my Mimi to get a hold of my dad, and since he had been with you, he had the same phone number. And I just thought that was neat. I'm like, well, Dad has the same phone, he must be doing better. And Dad said, I said, Dad, man, I got a problem. It's in shambles over here, And he said, well, come talk to me, Amy. And I thought, well, finally, tell him how bad they've all been to me and how they're driving me to drink, and how we can maybe change them so I don't have to drink so much. And he didn't. He told me about him and he told me about you. And he invited me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went to the ice house. And I fell in love with you. I've never been a person who didn't like AA. You smell good. You're funny. There's usually cookies. I like all those things. I do like coffee. Like, I never didn't like Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous because I'm a social person, And I was cute then. I was like 25, and so I liked the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. AAs are so nice. We had a lady at the ice house. Her name was Newell, and old timers are funny. So what Newell did was she came to the ice house one day, and she said, Amy, I cleaned out my closet. And in my car, I have a lot of clothes that I can't wear anymore, and I thought maybe you'd like them. And Newell was a professional woman, so they were beautiful clothes, very nice, pants, skirts, business suits. And I was so flattered that someone would think of me and that Newell would want to give me something. I now know that was her way of saying, please get dressed before you come to our meetings. They're like ninjas, the old AAs, right? But you were always so kind to me. But what happened to me at 3 years is what happens to a lot of people between 3 and 5. And see, that marriage had gotten better, and we had 2 more children, and now I've got 4 kids, and we bought a bigger house, and life's pretty good. And I'm getting real busy. And we had moved further from the ice house, and I only like ice house meetings. I tried those meetings where we moved to, but they don't do it the same way, and I don't like those. And I'm not going to go to those meetings like my life depends on it. I think I can just choose to stop going to meetings. And the problem with that is I had fellowship sobriety, and I stopped attending the fellowship. So I decide that I'm going to smoke weed because I like God, and God made weed. I'm going to rock it in the 4th dimension like the Native American Indians. And I won't be violent like before because this time I'm going to be a hippie. So we dug a fire pit, and I planted a garden, and I bought a guitar. That's a true story. I learned to play Polly Wolly Doodle all day. It's the only song I can play if you'd like to hear it later. And this is how it was going to go. And we were going to be fine because you all had taught me a whole bunch. And after all, it's a spiritual solution. So as long as I don't lose my spiritual connection, which I will enhance with marijuana, we'll be fine, right? Then, but I get thirsty. I get so thirsty when I smoke weed. And so the thought occurs, right? I'll only drink beer. Page 31. I'm only going to drink beer. I'm only going to drink at home. I'm only going to drink on Saturdays, unless it's Sunday, but I won't drink hard liquor. Unless it's Tuesday and they have the margaritas, and that's tequila, but it's with sugar. It probably doesn't count. All right, you see what I'm doing? Yeah. By any way imaginable, by all forms of self-deception, I want to prove myself not an alcoholic. It gets bad. Guys, it gets bad. Real fast. Alcoholism's patient. Beth always says you're the last one to know you're standing in poop. She says your friends smelled it a long time ago. So there I am, just knee deep in it, going, it's fine, everything's fine, we're doing great. Couldn't be happier, you know. And it's falling apart all around me, and I can't even see it. We end up divorced. I will tell you, I got to go back a little bit and tell this story, because I had worked at a bar when I was 19 years old, and I hope you all got a chance to work in a bar. Me and Michelle spent a lot of times working bars, and we had fun. Man, I love a bar. I like the smell of piss and cigarettes and blood. I love it. I like a rough bar, not a fancy bar. I want somebody to pull a knife and somebody bust a chair. You know, I'm there for that kind of thing. I'm that kind of woman, you know. And so I had dated the bouncer because I like to fight and he likes to fight, and that worked out really good. He won most of them, but I gave it a good college try. And I'd gotten pregnant by him, and he had took off. This was my second baby. So that was upsetting. Because now I'm a single mom with 2 kids, and what's that look like? It might look like I have some problems in my life. Right? We like it to not look like that. So I quickly started looking for someone willing to marry me, and I found out that his younger brother was interested in the position. And I always have to clarify, I am from Kentucky. He was not my brother. It was his brother. Do you understand? Y'all understand? And that poor man, he's a good guy. That poor kid. He didn't know what he was getting into. And I always like to say, thank God for men who date crazy women. Because I'd have been single if it weren't for you all. And there are men, you know, and they usually, it's like, oh, she's crazy. I love her. You know, I gotta have it. Until you get it. And then, you know, then EPOs and police. Y'all, you're not ready. You're not ready. Not for this kind of crazy. That poor man. God bless him. But we ended up divorced. And darkness set in after the divorce is all I can tell you. Just utter and complete darkness. And alcoholism will take motherhood from you. There's nothing in this world I love more than my babies. But if you put a drink in me, I don't mind becoming an idiot. I don't mind becoming a violent offender. I don't mind becoming a terrorist. I don't mind becoming those things at all. They suit my personality. I can't stand being a woman who would walk away from her children. And that's what happens to me.
I leave and I can't get back. I don't come back. And then the guilt, shame, and remorse builds up. And then you can't even show your face. You don't even know how to answer the phone or make a phone call. And you just wish you'd die. It's a pain you can't undo. And it's one they didn't deserve. And so I stayed out there in that darkness, man, blotting out the intolerable consciousness of my existence. See, when I got into Alcoholics Anonymous in 2010, and we'd read that book, thank God we were reading that book then, and I go to big book studies, they handed it to me, they said, here is the solution to all your problems. I said, very interesting, thank you. And I started studying that textbook, man, because I didn't have, it says in there, it will give us answers for things we cannot otherwise explain. And so here I am, I'm just in it. But it talks about the warped lives of blameless children. It talks about pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. It talks about blotting out the intolerable consciousness of your existence. See, I go to these big book studies and people would raise their hands and they'd say, what does boiled owl mean? You know, we'd get out the dictionary and look it up and, you know, what is this word? Because we were trying to study it and understand it. I never had to ask what that meant. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I didn't need you to define that for me. I lived on the streets for quite a while because I'm unemployable and I'm unreliable and I'm insane. I'm insane. Got a little twitchy. Ask Kevin. Had a little twitch, didn't I? Kevin took me bowling one time. They would all just stand back and get the ball. I showed up with a black eye, and he's like, how's it going? Great. Everything's great. Just nuts. Oh, goodness. So, anyway, while you were out there, I did what women do. I didn't really want a real job, and boys are kind of easy, so I just started. I was out one night, and we were broke, and we needed some money, and a guy said, hey, I know somebody that'll pay for some company. You know what I'm talking about? And I said, oh, really? How much do they pay? I'm very good company. And my second thought was, I've been giving this away since I was 14. What do you mean? Somebody pays for it. Bring them in. Call them up. And that was my next job. And that was my next career. And it was great at first. It was a lot of fun. I made a lot of money and things were good. But as you dissolve into the grips of alcoholism, see, I can't stand me. And that means I can't stand you. Ooh. It's my dad, you all. He wanted everyone to know he was here. All right, Bohannon, turn the lights back on. He used to hate when I talked about this part of my story. He did. He'd say, do you have to tell him you are a prostitute? Sorry, Dad. If I'd known I was going to be in Music City embarrassing you, I would have maybe found another job. But what happens is I'm getting angry. I'm getting dangerously antisocial. People don't like an angry prostitute. Business was slacking off. And I was getting homicidal, and I mean homicidal. I would rather rob you and kill you than do what I need to do to get what you have that I desperately need. It's happening. dangerously antisocial. My dad picked me up on March 6, 2010, again, off a street corner, and took me to a homeless shelter that had a recovery program, and he said, Amy, please go in there and let those women help you. You're going to die. And something happened. Sheldon talked about that this morning. My story is not what it was like, what happened, what it's like today. What happened is this. On March 6, 2010, something happened. Something happened. And I walked into that detox that I had walked into before, but I stayed. I stayed. All of a sudden I had a willingness. All of a sudden I had this gift of desperation. And that sounds lovely, except I'm angry, and so desperation looks like, sit down, shut up, some of us are trying to live. Oh, one of my girlfriends said if there was a word to describe me during that period of my life, it was unapproachable. But you loved me anyway. You loved me anyway. For the patience, love, and tolerance of Alcoholics Anonymous. You didn't say, oh, here she comes again. Maybe you should try something else, Amy. Right? You said, we're so glad to see you. Thank you. Thank you for clapping every time I got a white chip. So this had happened. I started reading that book. I started going foot to pavement, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was doing everything I could, and I went through those steps, and I loved the workshop this weekend, 6 and 7. When I did 5, it drove me to my knees. It drove me to my knees. Our original manuscript said we humbly on our knees. 5 drove me to my knees. When I sat down with that sponsor and I looked at who I was on paper, the harms I had caused, the resentments I carried. Change me or let me die. Change me or let me die. That was my 7-step prayer. I had a spiritual experience on 7. It wasn't a cool breeze from a mountaintop as Bill had. It was terrifying. I was terrifying. I was overwhelmed. I was frightened and paralyzed. But something happened. I got up from there and I went to the cafeteria to tell Lauren Pepper that something really weird had just happened. And I went on with life and I started to do 8 and 9. 9 meant something to me. When I went to my kids and said, how can I make this right? I meant that. With every fiber of my being, if I could not undo anything, if I had to live in a homeless shelter for the rest, none of that mattered, just making it right with those babies. That's all that mattered. It's all that mattered to me. And they said, keep doing what you're doing, Mom. Stay sober, Mom. So I went back to my sponsor, and I'm like, she's like, what'd they say? I'm like, they said, keep doing what you're doing. She said, get out a pen and paper. I said, okay. She said, what does that mean? I said, well, they just want me to stay sober. That's not what they said. They said, keep doing what you're doing. What are you doing? What are you doing? Where are your hands and where are your feet? What are you doing? See, I'm doing Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to meetings. I'm working with a sponsor. I'm reading the book. I'm taking inventory. I'm doing the prayers. I'm moving chairs. Whenever I get squirrely, my husband will take me to the clubhouse and he'll say, why don't you go in there and move a chair? Because when I'm moving chairs, see, thank you, Mike, I'm in service. When I'm moving chairs, I am useful once more. So I'm moving the chairs for Alcoholics Anonymous. All right? I still do all of that to do. I do the same things today to stay sober that I did to get sober. And the reason I do it is because I'm following those guys. So I want what they have. I want what they have. I said, if you want what we have, do what we do. Right? If you're here on a Sunday morning, you're in the winner's circle. You're the guys that are doing what we do. Congratulations. We get to be sober another day. That's pretty phenomenal.
it hasn't, we go through this. It's not easy. Tim Highland always says, I thought when I got sober, it would mean the absence of problems in little Timmy's life. And I always thought that because I thought that'd be cool. That was part of the deal. It's not. I still have that rage, and I still have those character defects. At 3 years sober, I cussed out my boss. Very grateful for that job when I was 9 months sober. I really was. Just super grateful. They gave me an opportunity. My resume, self-employed. They gave me a shot. I was really grateful, and I showed up early, and I worked hard, and I stayed late, and I did the most. But about 2.5 years in, I started thinking, you know what? They don't appreciate me around here. So I cussed out my boss and quit my job, and when I say that, I mean he called security. Rage. I'm explosive, and I'm frightening, and I'm dangerous, and it's like I can't control it. It's just a switch, and it happens even without my permission, right? 5 years sober, I went down the street to my neighbor's house. I kicked in their door, and I don't mean figuratively. And I threatened to kill everyone in there, and I meant it. I meant it. I was going to burn that house to the ground. I meant that, and I'm capable of that, and I'm 5 years sober. I called my sponsor afterwards, and I'm still fired up. I'm like, I told him, and I'm going to burn that place to the ground, And my son was going down there chasing a little girl, and I knew the house was bad news, and I didn't want him down there. I told him not to go down there. He kept going down there. So my solution for that was to burn the place to the ground. Now where you going, son? Right? Oh, Jesus. My sponsor said, you're going to jail. And I'm not. They're not calling the police. They're terrified at this point because I'm scary. And I said, when will I quit doing this? Why do I keep acting like this? Why can't I control? It's like she just, like alien, and it just busts out of me. And I'm hovering. I'm watching it like, oh, this isn't sober behavior. This is not. I love that emotional sobriety. I'm really good at that unless I'm scared or threatened, unless I'm fearful. I'm really good at emotional sobriety till you scare me, till I worry about my children, till I worry about my finances, my security, right? My sex instinct, my whatever. I'm real spiritual till I'm threatened. I'm one of those instincts, and then here comes that anger and that rage and that monster. She appears. So my sponsor said to me, what I'd like you to do is work all the steps. To which I said, oh, how dare I work all this. I take women through the steps, ma'am. She said, the second half of 11, Amy. The second half of 11. See, it reads that through prayer and meditation. And I gave you all the BS that we all get on meditation. I got the ADHD. I can't concentrate. I'm going to let Mike and Diane, they seem very spiritual. They could meditate and tell me what they found out. That's a good plan. And if you read in our 12 and 12, it says that that's what we're going to do. And so that's what I did. Right? So I was challenged to do all the steps. And I have to always say that meditation changed my life. God sent me Rachel, who is our resident sorcerer and meditation queen, and she would go and take classes and come back and lead us in meditation because of this motley crew of women. Thank you for loving me. And we're a mess.
They go to a home group call. Erica, we were there last week, and I'm sitting there talking to them. I'm like, I can't breathe. My dress was on backwards. I mean, like, we're a mess. We're messy, sloppy women who are just fumbling through. You know, we're always amazed when people ask us, you know, to sponsor. I'm like, did they meet us? Like, we're barely, I don't know what we're doing here. But we have fun, and we love each other unconditionally, and we go through things like growth through steps, and we go through things like deaths of our mothers and our fathers, and when we're worried about our kids, and we do it together in this loving embrace with one another, and we don't have to drink. And that's the miracle, right? That AA works and God is real. And that's the deal, man. I hope you all had as much fun as I did this weekend, and I can't wait to be back here next year. Thank you, Music City Roundup, for welcoming this motley crew from the south end of Louisville to your fancy hotel every year. I hope we didn't break anything.